The morning of my parents' while reading arrived crisp and bitter, with golden rays filtering through the walnut-framed windows of Thompson and Partners' legal office. I watched silently from my seat as my brother Alex paced around the room in his expensive suit, already behaving as if everything belonged to him, which, if I was being honest with myself, it probably did. Miss Emily Reynolds, the attorney's voice interrupted my thoughts. Shall we begin? I nodded, clutching the edges of my leather chair. At 32, I was about to discover what my parents truly thought of me, though deep down I already knew. The constant comparisons to Alex throughout our childhood had made their feelings painfully obvious. Mr. Thompson adjusted his silver-rimmed spectacles and started reading to our son Alexander for his unwavering commitment to the family corporation and upholding the Reynolds tradition. He continued listing assets that made my stomach not the family mansion in Connecticut, our beachfront property in Florida, majority shares in Reynolds Enterprises, and investments worth tens of millions. Alex's smugness grew with each item mentioned. Then came my portion. To our daughter Emily, Mr. Thompson hesitated, shuffling his documents. We bequeath the painting, Winter's Echo, currently displayed in the library of our primary residence. The room fell deathly quiet. Alex didn't even attempt to hide his laughter. A painting? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Just a painting, Alex smirked. It was your father's favorite, Mr. Thompson offered awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the inequality. Alex approached and placed his hand on my shoulder, squeezing just firmly enough to hurt. Don't worry, little sis. I'll find you a decent position in the company. Maybe in the mailroom? I shrugged off his hand and stood up. The Reynolds family fortune, accumulated over 3 generations, now belonged entirely to my brother. All I received was a single painting my father had purchased from a small gallery years ago. I'd always found it striking, a winter forest scene at twilight with peculiar geometric patterns hidden among the snow-covered trees, but it hardly constituted a fair inheritance. Is that everything? I asked Mr. Thompson. He nodded sympathetically. The painting must be removed within 1 week. I departed without another word, ignoring Alex's taunting calls behind me. The journey to my parents' estate, now Alex's estate, felt surreal. The security guards at the entrance gave me suspicious glances, but allowed me through when I explained about the painting. Inside, our longtime housekeeper Eleanor greeted me with tearful eyes. "Oh, Miss Emily," she whispered, embracing me tightly. "It's not right what they did to you." I returned her hug, fighting back my own tears. Eleanor had often shown me more maternal affection than my own mother. She helped me carefully remove the painting from the library wall, wrapping it securely in a soft blanket. "Your father would stare at this for hours," Eleanor said softly, especially during his final months. Sometimes he'd mumble about sequences and patterns. We thought the illness was causing delusions. I examined the painting more closely in the fading light. The geometric shapes seemed to shift and flow, creating configurations I'd never noticed before. "Sequences?" I asked. Eleanor nodded. He'd traced the patterns with his fingertips repeatedly. Your mother would become so frustrated about it. That night in my modest apartment across town, I hung the painting on my living room wall. It was undeniably beautiful, the winter scene painted with exceptional precision, each snowflake and branch rendered with remarkable detail. But those geometric patterns, they seemed intentionally misplaced, as if trying to communicate something. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my sofa, contemplating the painting, my father's final gift. Was it merely a cruel joke, a final reminder that I'd never measure up to Alex? Or could there be something more? My phone vibrated, Alex calling again. I ignored it, as I had his previous attempts. He probably wanted to gloat further or perhaps offer that mailroom position. Instead, I opened my laptop and researched the painting. Winter's Echo, by an artist named Thomas Sullivan. No major exhibitions, no auction records, barely any online presence. The gallery where my father purchased it had closed years ago. It was as if the painting had materialized from nowhere. A text from Alex appeared. "Don't be so bitter, sis. Come work for me. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted." I scoffed. What my parents had wanted was for me to be more like Alex, to care about profit margins and stakeholders instead of pursuing my passion for art conservation and restoration. I'd disappointed them by choosing my own path, and now they'd made their feelings unmistakably clear. But something about the painting continued to captivate me. Those patterns reminded me of techniques I'd studied in my art restoration course's steganography, the practice of concealing messages in plain sight. I stood and examined the painting more carefully. The geometric forms had subtly different hues than the rest of the composition, barely perceptible unless specifically looking for them, and they seemed to form a sequence. A sudden pounding on my door startled me. It was past midnight. Who would visit at this hour? Through the peephole, I saw Alex standing there, his usually immaculate hair disheveled. "Emily," he called. "Open up. We need to discuss the painting." I remained silent, watching him through the peephole. He'd never expressed any interest in art before. Why was he here now, in the middle of the night, asking about a supposedly worthless painting? "Emily, please." His voice took on an unsettling desperation I'd never heard before. "Dad left instructions about the painting. You need to return it." Instructions? My heart raced. Perhaps I wasn't imagining things. Maybe there truly was something hidden within those geometric patterns. "Go away, Alex," I called through the door. "The painting is mine. It's all I received, remember." "You don't understand," he hissed. "That painting, it's not what you think. Give it to me now, and I'll give you $5 million. $5 million for a painting he'd ridiculed just hours earlier? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Alex was many things, but he wasn't careless with money. If he was offering that much, the painting must be worth considerably more. I heard him fumbling with something. Keys? Did he still possess a spare key from when I'd been ill last year? I quickly grabbed the painting off the wall and rushed to my bedroom, locking the door behind me just as I heard my front door open. "Emily." Alex's voice echoed through my apartment. "Where are you? Where's the painting?" I clutched the painting close, my hands trembling. In the dim light of my bedroom, those geometric shapes seemed to glow faintly. And then I saw a pattern I'd overlooked before. The shapes weren't random at all. They formed numbers cleverly concealed in the winter scene, virtually undetectable unless you knew precisely what to search for. "Emily." Alex was getting closer. "Think about what you're doing. That painting is worth more than you can imagine." I turned the painting over, inspecting the back. The original canvas was professionally mounted, but something about the framing felt wrong, a slight gap that shouldn't exist. With trembling fingers, I pried at the gap. A small piece of paper fluttered out, covered in my father's meticulous handwriting. As I read the first line, my breath caught in my throat. "My beloved Emily, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I always knew you would. You perceive patterns others miss. You question what others accept. And now, my precious daughter, you're about to understand why your mother and brother have always been so threatened by you." The pounding on my bedroom door grew louder, but I barely registered it. I was too engrossed in reading my father's letter, my hands shaking as each word revealed a truth that would change everything. The numbers in the painting weren't just random shapes. They were coordinates, account numbers, and passwords to something that would topple the very foundation of Reynolds Enterprises. And my brother, still shouting outside my door, had no idea his perfect world was about to shatter. I don't know how long I sat there on my bedroom floor, reading and rereading my father's letter while Alex continued his tirade outside. My hands trembled as I absorbed each carefully written word. The numbers in the painting, when combined with the access codes I've included here, will lead you to the truth about Reynolds Enterprises. Your mother and brother built their empire on stolen innovations, patents, and designs taken from brilliant minds who trusted them. I was one of those minds. Emily, and you, my precious daughter, were always meant to be my successor. A loud crash from my living room jolted me back to reality. Alex had apparently grown tired of asking politely. "I'm calling the police," I shouted, already dialing 911. "Go ahead," Alex yelled back. "I'll tell them you stole company property. That painting belongs to Reynolds Enterprises." But I knew better now. The letter explained everything: how my father had been a brilliant inventor in his own right, how he'd hidden his work in plain sight all these years. The painting wasn't just art, it was a key to a concealed database of evidence. "The coordinates will lead you to my private laboratory," the letter continued. "Everything you need is there. But be careful, Emily. Your mother and brother will do anything to keep their secrets buried." I heard Alex's footsteps retreating, followed by my front door slamming. Taking a deep breath, I emerged from my bedroom. My apartment was in disarray. Alex had apparently searched every corner looking for the painting, but I didn't care about the chaos. I had work to do. First, I photographed every inch of the painting, capturing the geometric shapes from every angle. Then I carefully copied down the coordinates from my father's letter. According to his instructions, I needed to overlay the shapes in a specific sequence to reveal the complete set of access codes. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Eleanor. "Miss Emily, people are at the mansion removing all your father's belongings. They're searching for something in his study. Please be careful. They were destroying evidence." I had to move quickly. The coordinates led to a location in the Adirondacks, about 3 hours from the city. My father had written that he purchased the property under his mother's maiden name, keeping it hidden from my mother and brother. "The lab is underground," his letter explained. "The entrance resembles an old storm cellar, but it's equipped with cutting-edge security. Use the first sequence of numbers from the painting to gain access." I packed hastily: laptop, the painting carefully wrapped in blankets, some clothes, and my father's letter. As I approached my car, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its engine running. Alex wasn't finished yet. The drive to the Adirondacks was tense. The SUV followed me for the first hour, maintaining a consistent distance. I took every detour and back road I could think of, finally losing them somewhere near the state border. By the time I reached the coordinates, it was nearly dawn. The property appeared abandoned at first glance, just an overgrown field with an old farmhouse in severe disrepair. But as I walked the grounds, comparing the geometric shapes in the painting to the natural landscape, I realized my father's genius. The shapes weren't just numbers, they were a map. The seemingly random patterns of trees and rocks matched the artwork perfectly. The storm cellar was exactly where the painting indicated. Its rusted doors looked like they hadn't been opened in decades, but when I input the first sequence into a hidden keypad, they smoothly swung open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Motion sensor lights activated as I made my way down. The temperature dropped with each step, and I could hear the soft hum of ventilation systems. At the bottom, another keypad awaited. This time I needed to use the second sequence from the painting. The laboratory that emerged from the darkness took my breath away. It was like stepping into another world: pristine white walls, advanced equipment, and rows of computers humming quietly. But what captured my attention was the wall of patents and prototypes, dozens of innovations that I recognized from Reynolds Enterprises products. But with one crucial difference: they all bore my father's original signature. "Oh my God," I whispered, moving closer to examine them. These weren't just similar to Reynolds Enterprises technology, they were the originals. My father hadn't just been a passive observer in the company, he had been its hidden genius. A familiar voice behind me made my blood run cold. "Impressive, isn't it?" I spun around to find my mother standing in the doorway, looking exactly as she had the day she died, or at least the day we thought she died. Alex stood beside her, a satisfied smirk on his face. Did you really think your father was the only one who knew about this place? My mother asked, stepping into the lab. Though I must admit, hiding the coordinates in that painting was clever. We've been searching for this facility for months. I backed away, clutching my father's letter. You're supposed to be dead. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes the best way to find something is to make people stop looking for it. Your father's death was unfortunately real, but mine, well, let's just say it served its purpose. The will reading had been a trap, I realized. You wanted me to find the painting. We needed you to lead us here, Alex explained, moving to block the exit. Dad changed all the security protocols before he died. We couldn't get in without the codes. And now, my mother said, advancing slowly, you're going to help us destroy everything in this lab. All evidence of your father's work will disappear, and Reynolds Enterprises' patents will remain secure. But they had made one crucial mistake. While they were talking, I had been backing toward my father's main workstation. His letter had mentioned an emergency protocol, a sequence of numbers that would activate something he called the Revelation Protocol. Actually, I said, reaching behind me to input the sequence, I don't think I will. The lab's lights suddenly shifted to a pulsing red, and a computerized voice announced, Revelation Protocol activated. Broadcasting evidence to all major news outlets and regulatory agencies. Deletion impossible. My mother's face contorted with rage. What have you done? Dad called it his insurance policy, I said, feeling stronger with each word. Every piece of evidence in this lab has just been transmitted to hundreds of secure locations patents, proof of theft, fraudulent documents, everything. Reynolds Enterprises is about to face some very uncomfortable questions. Alex lunged forward, but it was too late. Alarms began blaring, and the lab's security systems activated, sealing all exits. We were locked in together with the truth that would destroy their empire. He knew, I continued, watching their faces pale. He knew you would try to bury his contributions, just like you buried his innovations. So he made sure the truth would come out one way or another. Through the lab's small windows, I could see police lights approaching. Someone, probably the lab's security system, had alerted local authorities. My mother and Alex exchanged panicked looks as the sound of sirens grew closer. The painting that had started everything still sat wrapped in blankets by the door. Those seemingly worthless geometric shapes had led me exactly where I needed to go. My father's final gift wasn't just a painting, it was justice. And as I watched my mother and brother realize their perfect world was crumbling, I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. The real story of Reynolds Enterprises was about to be told, and this time, no one would be able to hide the truth. The next 48 hours passed in a whirlwind of police statements, news reports, and corporate chaos. I watched from my hotel room as Reynolds Enterprises stock plummeted, years of carefully constructed lies unraveling in real time. Reynolds Corp CEO found alive, arrested for fraud, the headlines screamed. Corporate giant built on stolen patents. Father's revenge, the hidden genius behind Reynolds Tech. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. Journalists, lawyers, former employees, everyone wanted to hear my side of the story. But I was only interested in one call, Eleanor, our former housekeeper, who had more revelations to share. Your father knew this day would come, she told me, her voice heavy with emotion. That's why he made me promise to give you this after the truth emerged. An hour later, I sat in Eleanor's modest living room, holding another letter from my father. This one was different, not instructions or coordinates, but a story. His story. My dearest Emily, it began. Now that you know the truth about Reynolds Enterprises, it's time you understood your own history. You were never less than your brother. You were always meant for something more. As I read, the pieces of my life slowly shifted into focus. My father hadn't been just another victim of my mother's schemes. He had been playing a long game, preparing me for this moment from the very beginning. Those art history classes I'd taken weren't a waste of time, as my mother had claimed. They had trained my eye to spot patterns, to understand hidden meanings in plain sight. My work in restoration had taught me patience, precision, and the ability to reconstruct truth from fragments. Every time your mother pushed you away from the business, my father wrote, every time she favored Alexander, she was unknowingly helping to prepare you for this moment. You learned to think differently, to see what others missed. While Alex was learning to maintain the lies, you were learning to expose them. A knock at Eleanor's door interrupted my reading. A woman in a crisp suit stood outside, holding a briefcase. Ms. Reynolds? I'm Jessica Harmon from the SEC. We need to discuss your father's patents. The next few hours were a crash course in just how extensive my father's preparations had been. He hadn't just documented the stolen patents he had continued inventing, working in secret in his underground lab. The painting's coordinates had led not only to evidence of past theft, but to innovations that could transform the industry. Your father filed these patents under a trust, Jessica explained, spreading documents across Eleanor's coffee table. A trust that names you as the sole beneficiary. My hands trembled as I looked at the paperwork, dozens of patents, all legally protected, all now belonging to me. Not just the old innovations my mother had stolen, but new ones, years ahead of current technology. Reynolds Enterprises doesn't just owe you restitution for the stolen patents, Jessica continued. They've built their entire infrastructure around your father's technology. They can't operate without it. So what does that mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. It means, Ms. Reynolds, that you now effectively control the company that cast you aside. While my mother and Alex sat in jail awaiting trial, I walked into Reynolds Enterprises headquarters the next morning not as the forgotten daughter, but as its new owner. The board of directors, desperate to save the company from complete collapse, had no choice but to accept my terms. Standing in my mother's former office, I found another surprise, a wall safe hidden behind the painting that had once hung there. The combination? The final sequence of numbers from my father's painting. Inside was a personal journal detailing every innovation she had stolen, every inventor she had betrayed. But more importantly, it contained a list of names, people like my father who had been cheated out of their rightful recognition. 1 month later, I stood on a stage at a hastily convened press conference, announcing the company's new direction. Reynolds Enterprises was built on stolen dreams, I told the assembled crowd. Today, we begin making things right. We're establishing a foundation to compensate every inventor who was wronged by the previous management. But more than that, we're transforming the company into what it should have been all along, an incubator for innovation, where brilliant minds are celebrated, not exploited. The painting that started it all now hangs in my new office, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. The geometric shapes that once concealed my father's secret now represent something else, the pattern of a better future, one built on truth instead of lies. Alex wrote to me from prison, alternating between threats and pleas for help. I sent back a single photograph, the painting, now hanging exactly where our mother's portrait used to be. He would understand the message. His world of deception was over. My mother maintained her silence, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth she had fought so hard to bury was now her legacy. The great Victoria Reynolds would be remembered not as a visionary businesswoman, but as a thief who stole her own husband's genius. Late one evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, Eleanor brought me one final letter from my father. This one had been timed to arrive exactly 1 month after the company's transformation began. My darling Emily, it read, if you're reading this, you've done more than just expose the truth. You've begun to rebuild from the ashes of deception. I never wanted you to inherit a corrupt empire. I wanted you to have the chance to build something honest, something worthy of your heart. I traced my fingers over his handwriting, feeling closer to him than ever before. The worthless painting had been anything but worthless. It had been the key to everything. More than that, it had been my father's way of showing me that I had inherited something far more valuable than money or status. I had inherited his vision for a better world. 2 years later, Reynolds Enterprises, now renamed Phoenix Innovations, is unrecognizable from what it once was. We've become a leader not just in technology, but in ethical business practices. The foundation has helped dozens of inventors reclaim their stolen innovations, and our incubator program has launched countless new careers. The painting still hangs in my office, its geometric shapes now a familiar comfort. Sometimes, late at night, I could swear they shift slightly, as if my father is still there, leaving me new patterns to unravel, new truths to discover. But the most important truth was there all along, hidden in plain sight, just like those numbers. Success built on lies will always crumble, but success built on truth and justice will stand the test of time. Alex was released from prison last week. He sent me a message asking to meet, to talk about rebuilding our family. I haven't responded yet. Some patterns I've learned are better left unchanged. Instead, I spend my time focusing on the future. The company hosts an annual innovation fair where young inventors can showcase their ideas without fear of theft. Last year's winner was a young woman whose story reminded me of my father, brilliant, underestimated, but unwavering in her vision. As I handed her the award, I saw my father's painting reflected in the glass trophy. The geometric shapes seemed to dance with approval, reminding me that sometimes the greatest inheritances aren't the ones we can hold in our hands, but the ones that transform us from within. The worthless painting had given me something priceless: the truth about my past, control of my future, and, most importantly, the chance to ensure that no other brilliant mind would ever be silenced or stolen from again. And that, I know, would make my father prouder than any fortune ever could.